The IAQA Australia podcast was created on the lands of the people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to all First Nations people and recognise their enduring connection to the land, water and air, which are vital to the health and well-being of all people and of future generations. Welcome back to the IAQAA podcast. I'm your host, Julian Colangelo. Now, it's been a while since we've done our last podcast. Apologies for that. It's a bit of a crazy time of year. And I certainly plan to get this out sooner rather than later, but here we are in March already, so Happy New Year to all. First up, we've got Brian Jepson, IAQAA President, who's going to give us a bit of an update about what the committee has been up to and what the plans are for this year.
Hey members, Brian Jepson, the President of IAQAA. It's my pleasure to give a bit of an update on where we are at the start of this year, because it has been quite a ride for our industry more recently with the weather events along the East Coast, which has unfortunately taken a lot of our resources away from our volunteer organisation. However, things are moving forward, and I'd like to highlight a few of what those things are. So the first one is that I'd like to highlight is the progression for the adoption of the IICRC S500 and S520. So as of very recent times, the S500 has been adopted as an Australian standard as an AS IICRC S500, which is really great to be involved with, and the soon to be adopted S520. What else has been happening is that we have, off the back of our conference, where we had a panelist discussion around the use of ATP meters and other meters like them, and their application for use regarding category events and the clearances for those. So what we've done is we've worked on the background on a position paper on where we sit on that. That has gone through to other associations for comment, and we're starting to get some of those back soon. So we hope to be drafting what this will look like for release very soon. The other thing that we have been working on as well is the website. Recently we've had contact with the International IAQA Committee, and they have allowed us to use their logo and return back to that to save some confusion by and large. So we're in a bit of a transition phase. Part of that is to update our website with those logos. So hold on to your hat. We'll have something like that delivered over the next couple of months, but it's been in the works for a hot minute, and I thank MJ for looking after that for us. But we also have a lot of questions coming through about what we're planning to do regarding conferences this year. Now, to let you know, there are quite a few conferences from other associations going on, scattered through the space. However, we have decided as a committee to only hold a major conference every 2 years. So our next one will be in 2026. However, in its stead, what we plan to do is to introduce more local events that are much shorter, trade-based, potentially sponsor-led events, where we might have what we might call a mini conference that will lead into the themes of 2026. So we hope to reveal that to you. Our initial goal was to hold 3, however, because of the recent events and how late it's moving on in the year and how fast it's happening and how delayed we are with the work on the site works and actual operations of businesses and trades, that has set us back a little bit. So we do hope to still pursue this and lead into the greater conference of 2026. The original goal was to hold it in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. So that still hasn't been settled upon. However, Sydney seems to be more progressed than Brisbane at this stage, which was the original plan. So hold on to your hats regarding that. But we do plan on creating other events and also creating other technical working groups. So if you have any interest in helping us out with that whatsoever, as these themes come through, we might do a reach out to you as a community to see if you might want to be involved or have any input on these particular topics that we have planned. We have had in the runnings for quite some time though, a plan to do a position paper or handbook type development regarding methamphetamine contamination and validations, as well as water damage and fungal contamination in the construction industry and newly built construction. These are very broadly comments that we've spoken about, so it's not something we are actioning right now. However, if there are other ideas that you have, or if you want to be involved in any other way, our arms are always open, because the more volunteer love that we can get, the further we can add value to the rest of the greater community. So that is the update that I have for you right now, and I thank you for your patience and look forward to sharing with you the next release of the ATP position paper. Take care.
So for today's podcast, we're revisiting Hank Nolan's webinar, Mould Detection with Man's Best Friend, and the full video of which will be available on our website. I have had to trim down the video a little bit just to make it a bit more friendly for audio format, but definitely jump on the website and have a look at the full presentation. There's a lot of great videos there of the mould dogs in action. So Hank is a retired Master Sgt from the US Army. In his 27th career as a military policeman, he spent 6 years as a canine handler. During Operation Desert Storm, he added the responsibility of air quality inspector. Upon his return home, he and his business partner continued training canines for explosive and narcotics detection. They received an inquiry from a client as to if dogs could be trained to detect hidden moulds in their buildings. The challenge was accepted. Over 1,000 dogs later, and here we are. Hank has been actively working in the indoor air quality industry for over 25 years and performed over 1,000 IAQ inspections in the USA and Canada. Canines have been used to detect hidden moulds for over 20 years. As one of the investigative tools of a mould inspector, dogs are able to pinpoint the location of mould infestations with a 98% rate of accuracy. They have been able to find mould behind fibre walls, wood and concrete, and they are your family friend when they are not working. So, like I said, you'll be able to jump on our website and watch the full video. I think that will be back online very soon. It's very entertaining and you're very insightful as well, and a lot of great videos of the dogs in action. I highly recommend that. So let us know what you think, and you can talk about the show on LinkedIn using the hashtag IAQAAPOD. Thanks for listening.
But this is where our dogs start. We have done both of breeding dogs, and we also did a lot of adoption of dogs. Some of them had other jobs before they came to us. Like Zeus was working in the kitchen. We took him out of the kitchen and we made him a bomb detection dog. Then his assistant, Toby, was taken out of the same type of job, and we made him a drug detection dog. So not only do we breed our own, but we have rescued quite a few dogs over the past 15 years of doing mold inspection dogs. We also have trained dogs to do bed bug inspections. But detection dogs work with their nose naturally, but they're what we call discriminatory sensors. And that means that if you went into a cafeteria and you're looking at all the food, usually the first thing that catches your scent is what you're going to eat, whether it may be the chicken or it may be the liver and onions. And that's how humans are. But the dog can actually go in and kind of lift his nose up in the air, and you've probably seen them do that. They come into a different place and they're sniffing the air, and they're able to pick it out. Okay, that's chicken, that's liver, that's beef. Oh, wait a second, there's Brussels sprouts. I want those. So they're able to discriminate a lot more scents than we can. As a trainer, when you're training a dog, you train on as little as 1 gram of explosives, narcotics, whatever you're training on. In our case, we train Petri dishes. This happens to be a Petri dish that is growing black mold. This one happens to be Charterium. And we've got hundreds of them that we train with. The dog is able to pick up on down to approximately 1 gram of an item. We double seal them when we're testing. The dog naturally and the handler do not know where the substance is located. So we're training them usually 20 minutes a day, take a break for an hour, another 20 minutes of training, and go back and forth. To fully train a mold inspection dog takes approximately 800 to 900 hours of training to get them down to where they should be. So they do a remarkable job of identifying targets, even when there's mixing behind them. When we were training narcotics dogs, we would put the drug into a background odor, like hide it in a coffee can. We would put it in fabric softeners. We would hide it in dog food. And they had to go and make sure that they were getting the right scent. Dogs have about 24 square inches of olfactory sensing cells, because it's not only in their nose, but it goes back into their sinuses, their palate they sense with, and their tongue also. Humans only have about 1 square inch of olfactory nerves, but dogs' noses are anywhere from 20,000 to 2 million times more sensitive than the human noses are. In outdoor training, we will take a kilo of cocaine and put it out in a field upwind from the dog, and the dog has to search by putting his nose up into the wind and getting the scent back and forth until eventually coming on target. So we do put them through a lot more than we put ourselves through. Some applications that you've already known about: narcotics, explosives, search and rescue. We train dogs to find people who are stowing away either on airplanes, trains, or planes, and in cargo ships. There are assistance companions, like mine is now in the other room hiding. Originally, there were guide dogs. We've trained termite dogs, bedbug dogs, mold inspectors. My dog Gideon in the other room, aside from being a mold inspector, is also my diabetic crisis dog. He's been trained on my blood sugar level, that if my blood sugar goes over 250 units, he will sit on my lap, basically, come up and lick my face and alert me that my sugar level is high. We train dogs as personal retrievers for folks that are disabled, people in wheelchairs. We've trained dogs to find money. And it's interesting because if they can find cocaine, they can usually find money, because it's known that about 10% of the money in the US is tainted with some type of drug. So there's cancer detection that we've trained dogs for. And there's a story that we tell. The university that we work with our dogs is also a cancer research project. A gentleman went over to get his testing done. Doctor gave him the prescription. He showed up at the site, and the nurse brought him in the back, put him in a gown, and she said, just lay down on that table inside the room. Well, he lays on the table. Nothing happens for 5 or 7 minutes, and all of a sudden this cat comes in the room, and the voice over the loudspeaker says, "Stay still, don't move." Well, the cat jumps up on the table, and he sniffs him, and he paws at him, and he sniffs at him, and the cat comes out the door. And the lady says, "Just hang on, we're not finished yet." So all of a sudden the door opens and a Labrador retriever comes in, and he comes up to the table, and he's sniffing the man's feet and his legs and his arms. He sniffs his head, goes down the other side of his body, and then he goes out the door. And the lady says, "Okay, you're finished, you can get dressed now." So he goes out, he gets dressed, he's in the waiting room waiting for the doctor. The nurse comes to him and hands him an envelope. And he opens up the envelope, and it's a bill for $500. And she says, "What's this for?" Well, the lady says, "Well, that's for the CAT scan and the lab test." Good,
That's a
somebody
good one.
laughed. But so we've used dogs to do inspections like that. And even I've had people tell me that their own personal dogs would react differently to them if they were ill. And those of you that do have dogs, I think you can attest to that. Right now, 2 days ago, we had to put down my wife's dog. And I really believe that Gideon is very depressed over it and is mourning over it, because he just really doesn't want to do anything. It was, "Come on, let's go for a ride this morning." And he looked at me and said, "Do we really have to?" And he's been very just moping around, kind of looking for bear, because he can't find him. And now the Swedes have put 5 dogs to work in the airport, screening people for COVID-19. And I don't know how they're doing that, but I'm assuming that they had the virus contained in order to train the dogs, And now they're looking at screening people as they're passing by. So what exactly are the dogs alerting on? The VOCs that the mold is exuding is what the odor is. In the States here, we call VOCs mold farts, because basically that's what they're doing. They're giving off an internal gas. And some of the VOCs are okay, other VOCs are poisonous, some VOCs are very deadly. But that's exactly what the dogs are alerting on. And these here, we've had for a couple of years. And you would think they're dead, but no, the VOCs are still there. This one here was collected in October of 2017. Dog still alerts on it because the odor is still there. So the VOCs are what the dog is alerting on itself, and we train them to find them. This was something we did on CNN a couple of years ago.
I'm Kat Carney. We all know that dogs are man's best friend, but when it comes to detecting potentially health-threatening mold in your home or business, dogs can also be a lifesaver. And joining me now with some insight is Hank Nolan, the owner of Sunstate Specialty?
Specialty Canine.
Specialty Canine, and we've got his mold-sniffing dog, Copper, standing by. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Now, before we see the dog, let's talk about the dangers of mold in the home and how prevalent is that now?
It's becoming more and more as we close up our homes from humidity and air exchange. Mold grows on any surface at all that'll feed it. It needs moisture, it needs water to grow. But we bring mold spores in with us on our shoes, on our clothing, in the air that comes in, and they just settle, and they're dormant until they find some water to grow on. They can cause anything from a mild asthma attack to some pretty well established pulmonary problems.
Well, and you said we track it in sometimes on our shoes. Well, today we actually brought it into the studio, and as we said, we have Copper standing by with Christy, and we're going to see exactly how he goes about detecting mold. So if we can just see that now, we've got it hidden in our studio. We don't actually have it growing here. And now while we're watching this, tell us exactly what he's doing.
Well, basically what the dog is taught to do is to systematically search different areas along with his handler.
See where he stops up there?
Working with Copper today. And it's a very methodical program where the dog will
He's
search
inspecting.
on the way to what we hopefully
Takes him
will
away.
be find on a positive reward.
And how is this method different from traditional methods of mold detection?
In the past, someone would come into an example, a 2,500 square foot home, and they would figure they need to take...
Did he find it? Is that what we're seeing here?
Yes. Now he'll get a treat for his reward.
And we basically had
How much training does a dog have to be able to do this?
Usually it's about 1,000 working hours of training, anywhere from 4 to 6 months. And it's done at a special academy that we've been dealing with in Clearwater, Florida.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, I'm sure people are sitting at home thinking, how can we have this done? Or, you know, so what should they do if they're worried about mold in their home?
Well, we are a member of the American Institute of Hygienists of America. We are a different way of doing things. Some people come in and do strictly air samples. Take about maybe 15 to 20 air samples per your house, and it costs anywhere from $75 to $100 per air sample. Well, we use the dog as an investigative tool like all of the other hygienists are.
Great. And just real quick, where can people find, oops, actually they're telling me we've got a wrap. So again, if people write us out, we'll be able to forward them to where you are. Hank Nolan from Sunstate Canine, thank you so much for your time today. And for your health, I'm Kat Carney.
Now, the interesting thing I wanted to tell you is when Christy had run through this before without the dog, she knew where the hide was. Look, you're going on worldwide television, you're not going to screw up. So she knew the hide was not where Copper was stopping. So she pulled him and went to find where the hide was. He found it on his own, did very well. I asked for a copy of the video so we could have it for PR. And I reviewed the video and I called them back. I said, I need to take the dog back into your studio. He said, why? I said, the dog alerted in your studio. Well, yeah, you found the stuff. No, he alerted elsewhere in your studio. So the next day we made an appointment between shows to go and re-inspect the studio. Christy took him through. He went back to that box there, and underneath the box, we moved it. The wood floor was cracked and was wet. Underneath their flooring was their hot water pipes. The water pipe was about 6 inches into the concrete floor and was leaking. and was creating a mold throughout the whole studio. It was an 1,100 square foot studio. They ended up spending over $35,000, and they couldn't understand why beforehand, why their people were getting sick. Well, there was the problem. So they ended up putting the studio down for 4 weeks to completely renovate and remediate the studio. So it's like, yes, like you said, yes, we did a good job. Like I said, we've trained over 1,800 dogs now. Some of our dogs have gone to France, others are in Italy, South America, Canada, US. We're now in the 3rd generation of dogs because we've been training them for about 12 years. And the dog has a working life of probably 6 to 7 years, I would give them, so that they're efficient. We've had a lot of our customers coming back and replacing their retiring dogs with somebody new. So the training program is going very well. We try in our own way to make it easier, but we suggest that all the inspectors don't just use the dog. Like one client of ours did, this was about 10 years ago. We had 3 hurricanes hit Florida within 6 weeks, and he was building a housing project, 3-story attached homes, condominiums, just south of Sarasota, Florida, near Tampa. And they had gone through, the owner said, I'm not taking it until you make sure that I don't have mold. Well, he called us, wanted to know how many dogs we can bring down. We brought down 4 dog teams. He had 196 units that he needed inspected. All 2-story buildings, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and garage. Each story probably was about 650 square feet per story. My daughter went down there with 2 other handlers, and we brought a handler in from our Tampa office. I asked him what type of test equipment he wanted us to send, and he said he had his own test equipment. That's fine. We do the inspections. Christy called me and said, Dad, he's got a really interesting way of testing for mold. He said, what was it? Well, we went through the first and the second and then the 3rd unit. And in the 3rd unit, copper alerted underneath the stairwell going upstairs to the 2nd floor against the wall. And she said, I called the gentleman on the radio and he came over and wanted me to show him how the dog alerted, and he did. And he said, I'll be right back. Let me go get my test equipment. And he came back with a 5-pound sledgehammer. Every place the dog alerted, they opened up the wall with a sledgehammer. 196 units, 114 of them had mold. And he had a lot of repairing to do. But I do suggest that you use a program with other investigative tools. You need a moisture meter. You need an infrared camera. You need a humidity container. You know, all of these things work together to make the team work. The dog is one tool that we use when we walk in and don't actually see the mold growing. Put the dog down, the dog says it's here, take your infrared camera out and see what you find. And this is what we do. We train on the wheel. This is the dog alerting, either sitting or laying down. And we do use a food reward. We don't deprive the dogs of food. They're on a set amount of food every day. They eat breakfast in the morning. Then 1/3 of their food would be used for reward or training. And then they get their dinner in the evening. So they're not being deprived. Trust me, I love food enough myself. I wouldn't take it from a dog. But these are just different mold protocols that we've established in a couple of different places. These were proposed between Texas, Louisiana, and Florida. Our Environmental Protection Association, in all of their wonderful wisdom, has not come up with a national standard yet. So each state is left on its own. So I can go from Florida, and Georgia has no regulations whatsoever, but people keep calling us in Florida or Louisiana because we're licensed by our individual states, and we have a standard that we're sworn to because of what we do, and been traveling all over the country. We're getting more and more states now that are actually growing an intelligent spine, as I would say, regulating the industry in their state. And it's put a demand on other states to come up with it also. Additional remediation practices that we recommend: using personal protection equipment, disposing of things off-site. It's amazing how it used to be where somebody would do a remediation in a house and you would see all of these black garbage bags sitting by the curb for the trash people to take away in the morning. Well, if the bag breaks overnight, that mold permeates through the air, infests the area. It's very sickening to people around. Different types of mold and what they cause. I have now what's known as COPD, chronic obstructed pulmonary disease. And the doctors blame it on the mold work that I've been doing all these years. Because in the beginning, I was young and everything was fine, and who wanted to wear a mask? It's like our dear president, who wanted to wear a mask? Well, we learned after a couple of years of how bad it was. I have one gentleman who did lose a lung, who was a mold inspector. They found cladosporum and edamine growing in his lungs. You know, I'm hoping that you all are using your intelligence that God has given you to make sure that you don't get ill while you're doing your job. Aspergillus and penicillium is the most prolific mold that there is in the world. If you send samples into the laboratory, most of the time, even the lab technicians, because of the similarity between the aspergillus and the penicillium, are not able to tell which is which. So you'll get a lab report back that lists both aspergillus and penicillium on one line, and they're combined. Because their similarities in species just make them undescribable. They're basically twins. But we use a Tramex calibration for our detection of moisture, either a probe program or a flat meter that goes up against different types of material. We use FLIR cameras, which will give us an excellent look of the interior of a wall. It'll even, well, take the exterior of a wall itself, and it'll tell you where the moisture is by the different calibrations of color. If you look at the little picture there, starting from the left is moisture, gets a little drier, and the one on the right with no color is a dry piece of plastic. So it works. If you're not using it, I would suggest that you do invest into it. This is a client of ours from about 8 years ago. You'll notice the spots on him, the lesions and the abscesses are from chitomium. Their house was overcome in a hurricane. They were still living in the house with the mold. This gentleman is, I believe at that time he was about 60 or 65 years old. His wife took him to the doctor. They treated this as a rash, and he started to exhibit signs of dementia. After about 4 weeks, they put him into a senior citizens home for senility. In the meantime, they were having people come and inspect the home for damage, mold, etc. after the hurricane. They had 2 companies in and could not find the source of mold. We brought the dog in, and this house was up on blocks. It was about a 50-year-old home, and it was beachside, about maybe 600 or 800 yards in from the ocean. Being that it was an older home, the heating system was all under the house, and it was a central return in the middle of the living room where all of the air would come back in, go through the venting, and come back out. Well, the dog started to do his inspection and went right to the grate over the return. We took the grate off, put a flashlight down, and there was water pooling in the vents underneath the house. And naturally, the mold was growing there. All of these people coming in were looking in walls, looking in the ceiling when it was being walked on. We started work on the home with a remediator, and the wife called and said, I just got a call from the senior center. My husband's awake and wants to know what he's doing there. Well, we brought him to an allergist. The allergist found that the chitomium was on his skin. It wasn't a rash. it was mold growing on him. And it was causing these dementia episodes that he was having. It's amazing what mold has done. Yet it's older than the dinosaurs. And we need it for one thing to make cheese, but on the other thing, you breathe it in and it's very, very evil for you.
Hey everyone, Julian here again. Thanks so much for listening. Like I mentioned, the video recording will be available on the website. And again, sorry for the huge delay in getting this episode out. Stay tuned because next month we have an interview with Ash Boss Hanley where we'll be talking about mold in underground environments. So again, thank you so much for listening and take care.